Hello and welcome into another episode of Reality Check here on Talking Jets. I am Matt O'Leary, joined as always by my co-host, Jeremy Jets Chaos. What is going on, my friend?
What is up? Feeling good, feeling good. We are so close to free agency, and I cannot wait because, man, in a week from now, everything's going to look different.
So close to free agency, and you're on the East Coast this week. I feel like you're even more one of us. It's like, oh yeah, Jeremy out in California, yeah, Jeremy, that's one thing, but he's on the East Coast this week. So love that for you, Jeremy. Hope you're enjoying.
Yeah, we're having a great time, man. I love it. I love being in New York. It's good to be back in my home state.
Absolutely. So today we have a few things to get into. One of these things, as you see, is we're going to talk some Odell later on, but I wanted us to start with Joe Alt. Actually, before we do that, we should talk about this lovely event coming up. How about this? The Talkin Jets draft party. Oh, I got to move us because Jeremy's over the QR code when I do that. So at the main event in Farmingdale on Long Island, April 25th. If you don't know, we've been talking about it for a while here, but first round of the NFL draft, we are doing a live party in person at the main event, Farmingdale. Get your tickets. Your tickets include, with purchase, a open bar for the entirety of the party, and food. You get raffles. There's going to be a ton of raffles. We'll be doing some giveaway stuff. It's going to be a ton of fun. And a little birdie told me that there's a good chance that Jeremy will be in the building for this as well.
Yeah. For anybody who scanned my head by accident when it was blocking the QR code, you actually get a 10% discount off Sunnyside Farm eggs if you scan my head. So feel free to take advantage of that deal. Yeah, it looks like I would say it's at this point, given any of the freak things that can happen in life, knock on wood, I'm pretty much going to the draft party. I'm pretty much there. The flight has been booked, so here I come. The only thing I haven't worked out is the details.
I love it. So we are excited to have Jeremy in for that. Green Bean and Ryan as well, making it's a road game for you guys, home game for me out on Long Island, but it's a great place. The main event, they have a ton of TVs. We could even put the broadcast up on the TVs. And if you can't make it out, don't worry. We'll still be live streaming all 3 days on the channel. But let's get into this one. Speaking of the NFL draft, Jeremy, Joe Alt is a name that seems to get brought up a ton, and for good reason. He is a phenomenal offensive line prospect, and when the Jets were losing a lot of games, it seemed like the consolation prize was going to be they would be in prime position to draft Joe Alt.
Yeah.
They win a couple games at the end of the year. They end up with the 10th pick in the NFL draft, and at pick number 10, it is extremely unlikely that Joe Alt makes his way there. But there's been some rumblings of him falling a little bit. And what I mean by falling a little bit is like not a guaranteed top 5 pick, but somewhere in the top 10. And now there seems to be a debate whether or not the New York Jets should trade up for Joe Alt. Jets Twitter legend Connor Rodgers, who hosts a podcast with Trevor Sikkema, the NFL draft, the NFL Stock Exchange. They were doing a 3-round mock draft. It's a 2-hour mock, but I was watching it. And in their scenario, they had Joe Alt fall at pick number 8, and the Jets traded up for him. They gave up a 2025 second-round pick to go from 10 up to 8 to grab Joe Alt. So, Jeremy, let's get this rocking and rolling. What are your thoughts on a potential Alt trade up?
Well, yeah, obviously, the first thing that we need to know, and we're going to know in a week, is who are we signing in free agency. If we sign a guy who has, one of the free agents that has experience at left tackle, that we're comfortable with at left tackle, then I don't see any reason to trade up for Joe Alt. And that's because there's a lot of really high quality tackles in this draft. I think the issue is that only one other tackle really you could really count on or feel comfortable playing left tackle. So, and that's Fashanu. But between Fuaga and J.C. Latham, there's some really talented plug-and-play type tackles in this draft. I think those 4 are arguably all plug-and-play tackles. So I don't know why we would have to give up trade capital. I understand that Joe Alt is fantastic. He's clearly above the rest of the pack. I don't know if it's worth a second round pick if we already signed a tackle, signed somebody in free agency that can play left tackle. If we didn't, then I think the question is how much do they like or dislike Fashanu?
Yeah, it's a good point with Fashanu because it is going to be contingent on what happens in free agency because they could very well go out, and I'm just using as the example, but let's say Tyron Smith for the example, who that veteran left tackle, you know where he's going to play on opening night. And then suddenly you're okay with drafting someone, as you mentioned, like a Fuaga or a JC Latham, someone who's played on the right side of the offensive line, and you don't have to worry about trading up. But if they don't do that, let's say they're either signing guards and their plan is to have Elijah Vera Tucker at tackle, or they sign someone like a Mike Onwenu, who's just pretty much right side of the line kind of guy, either right guard or right tackle, then it opens up a hole on the left side. And as you mentioned, we know Joe Alton Fashanu can do it. We don't know. It is a gamble if JC Latham, Talisi Fuaga, any of that next batch of guys can do it because they'd have to make the switch from the right side to left side. I am willing to consider that idea of trading a 2025 second round pick to move up in the first round to get a bona fide number one left tackle, best left tackle in the class. I think he has the highest ceiling of the group. I also think he has the highest floor of the group. And the Jets in a win now window could benefit from both one, having the highest ceiling guy and having the highest floor guy as well. So I understand why where you're coming from on being apprehensive about moving the draft capital next year to go up and get a guy, but I think it's going to be dependent on what happens. And if there's still a hole at left tackle,
Oh yeah,
I think that it becomes that much more. I don't know if likely is the right word, but it makes a little bit more sense if there's no veteran left tackle brought in.
yeah, it's a lot more understandable. Like I mean, like unlike some of the things we put up as our topic, our reality check because it's not realistic at all. This is a little different where this is definitely worth a discussion. And I think if we don't fill the need, if we go into the draft and we don't fill the need, and my line in the sand is you can't impact this year's draft. Like we need that third round pick because we have needs. People don't realize that it's not just that we, even what we do in free agency, we need a defensive tackle, and that's real. That's not fake. Um, we really have to see what we do before the draft. But I think that third round pick, whether it's going to be the best center or interior offensive lineman, whether it's the best defensive tackle, whether it's to groom your future number two wide receiver or whatever it is, it's going to be an important pick. If you tell me second round 2025, I could live with if we don't sign a left tackle and Joe Alt is the guy, man. I mean, he is the safest, most solid pick you can make. He shores up the position for us for 10 years. And we would have time to, I guess, repack that second round pick in 2025. Right? There are guys we might lose. People are talking about Bryce Huff, be a team that wants the edge on them. They want to trade with us in a sign and trade. Whatever it is, we might be able to recoup that second round pick for next year. There's a lot of time to do that. So I'm not totally against it. I just think it depends on free agency.
Yeah, it is going to be very contingent on what happens in free agency. I think anyway with the offensive line. And look, they're going to they're going to have to be active in free agency on the offensive line, whether we like it or not. Like, yes, ideally you're getting someone in the NFL draft, developing them, and they're on a cheap contract. I think you need a mix of both this year. Trying to fill three holes is very, very challenging to do only through the draft. And same thing can be said about only in free agency. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Jets have to fill all three spots in free agency and then they go out and draft the Brock Bowers or Roma Dunze or whatever at pick number 10. I don't think that's really realistic either. I think it's going to be a little bit of a balance where they're trying to fill it with both free agent band-aids as well as the NFL draft, whether it's at pick 10, moving up, or as we've discussed in the past as well, moving back.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when you think of free agencies, they're band-aids, whereas the guys you get through the draft are hopefully guys that stay for years. And in the long run, you eventually want to have an offensive line of guys like that, guys that you've built, you've selected, developed, they have years together. I mean, that's what we really want. We don't have a choice. There's no way to make that happen this year. So we're going to need some band-aids. But the more draft guys we draft that end up becoming starters for our team, the better I think we are, for the future.
Jeremy, I got some bad news. Unfortunately, according to boycott activity, we shouldn't try in 2024 because spoilers, the Jets won't have a good free agency. Let's move forward with that in mind. Are you already going into this offseason or this free agency period with the thought of the Jets are going to blow it somehow in free agency, or is our guy boycott activity a clown?
No, I'm not going to call him a clown. I can understand, but I'm not going to also say that we won't. I'm gonna be a little bit more neutral. That I'll respect Boycott's opinion on that, and I understand where he might be coming from and some of the negativity that's coming out of the Jets locker room from the offseason, and reasons why you might be hesitant to think that we could have a good free agency. But I'll also remind you that JD has, with his failures and his misses, has also had some really nice successes. And we were talking about it before, you and I, with Reed. We got ourselves, I think, one of the, top 15 cornerbacks in the NFL at a really good value. And none of us really saw that coming, when he made that signing. So I think there are a lot of free agents out there in a lot of different positions that we don't talk about all the time that might bring good value, that might help the team. And I don't think, I don't believe that there's any player that if we're not in the bidding that we offer enough, I don't that would refuse to come here. I mean, there's always a couple that might refuse to go to any specific team for random reasons, but I don't believe that the players are like the media on the Jets. I don't believe that. I think a lot of the players around this league really love and respect Aaron Rodgers, and they know he's coming back. And I think there's a lot of players who he always has had, whether, as mad as people might want to be at him. The one thing about Robert Saleh is he's highly respected and regarded around the league.
Yeah, no, he absolutely is. And I'm with you. It's not, look, the Jets aren't in a perfect situation, but as you mentioned, players wise, I know, fans and the media have their opinions on Aaron Rodgers, and that's fine. But for the players' perspective, you don't really get too many people saying anything negative about Aaron Rodgers. I think he's a very well-liked person in the league from the, the player side of things. So, I'm not throwing in the towel because things went poorly in 2023. Obviously, there's a ton of pressure on the 2024 Jets, and Joe Douglas has to get it right this offseason because, it's time for this team to win some games here. But I'm not going into it with the mindset that it's lost no matter what they do. It's not going to work out here. Tony, the GM, friend of the program, says, don't trade up, trade down with Denver or Jaguars and ask for Bowles or Robinson, then draft JPJ. I don't know if there's a bigger advocate for JPJ than Tony, the Jets GM. I like him a lot. I don't know if this is a route that they would go, though. Do you think this is realistic for the Jets?
It just depends on again, I know, and I hate that answer, but it's all contingent upon what happens next week. If we get ourselves a left tackle and we give ourselves the flexibility, I wouldn't complain about a trade down at all. I mean, if you trade down and get us I think there's a really nice sweet spot in the second and third rounds of this draft. There's a lot of guys that you can get. If we traded down and loaded up and got like an extra second or third or something, or did something for next year and this year, whatever it is, and ended up with JPJ, and we had already signed a left tackle, I'm not feeling horrible about that, especially if we get enough. Who knows? Maybe we get enough, and we've seen JD do this before. Maybe we get enough in return. Then we sneak into the back of the first round again, and we get a guy like Thomas Jr., the wide receiver. We get Lad McConkey, and then all of a sudden we're celebrating, right? If we were to walk out with JPJ and a wide receiver like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's certainly a path where this could happen. It's not that I dislike JPG. I think he's great. I think he's going to be a really good center at the next level. I think if they were to move back in the draft, someone that's really grown on me a lot recently, the more I've dug into this draft class, I really like Troy Fontenot. And I think he's going to be a tackle at the next level. There were some questions on whether he'd be a guard or a tackle. I think after the combine and how he measured out, that it's pretty much confirmed he can play tackle. And if they fix, I don't think he can play left tackle. So I think they would have to sign one in this scenario. But if they move down and got Troy Fontenot, and then AVT is going to play guard, or maybe it's Fontenot is going to play guard and AVT is going to play tackle, whatever, just those two on the right side of the line next to each other, I could get behind that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That was a huge shift in the draft. Tom C sent me a text with exclamation points. When he said the measurements, I think it was like 35. He was over 35 inches, and I think that right at that moment, it was like when you look at the quality of his play, and that kind of, there was no reason to sit there and say, oh, he can only play guard, and even if he is like an AVT, like that's. I say even that would be amazing. Can you imagine, like you said, bringing in on another AVT type guy, and now you have them together over there, and you really could test them out each way, and what's the best combination, who plays where. I think that's a great situation for us to be in.
Blitz Crew chimes in with a super chat, says, at the start of free agency, whose door are we at? Hoping for a pick swap for Denver for Sutton. Jeremy seems more chill on the East Coast. Yeah, what would you take some West Coast gummies with you for this? You're very calm and reserved, Jeremy, on this program.
Well, for the last couple of days, I've been in Sullivan County. I'm in a house by a lake. So let me show you real fast. I don't know if you can see that. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at a lake, and I've been, we've just been relaxing and enjoying just the country. So yeah, maybe I'm a little bit more chill.
I love it. We gotta get you going a little bit at some point in the episode. I'm sure we can get you going. But is there someone? Well, two parts for you. One, what do you think about swapping 10 and 12 for Courtland Sutton? And then number two is, at the start of free agency, who's the guy that you want to be like, okay, free agency begins, boom, Jets sign this guy to whatever contract?
I'm okay. Now, before I say it, make a fool out of myself. I was under the impression, maybe it hasn't happened yet, there was a strong belief that Cam Johnson was going to be a free agent from Jacksonville, that he was going to pry loose because they couldn't afford to pay him. Is that not the case?
Cam Robinson, the left tackle.
That's what I mean. Cam Robinson. Yeah. Isn't he going to be a free agent?
They could cut him. I don't believe they've cut him yet, but that's someone who they might end up having to cut ties with to save money, but they haven't done it yet.
So if he got cut, I actually love that. I would love to get him. I'd love to get him because I think everyone's going to be a little overpriced. I think they're going to be you're going to pay a little bit of that's the thing, right? When you have to go out to free agency, but I don't think he's going to be outrageous. And I think what I like about him is he's not a 1 year or 2 year fix. This is a guy we can bring in who could be our left tackle for 5 or 6 years. He's still young enough to do that. He plays the position solidly enough. So I would be excited about something like that, because if he gets cut, it's only because he's a cap casualty.
Yeah, that's true. I think the one that they're going to go for and try to get in here and like make a big splurge is Tyron Smith. I'm not saying that's my favorite option at left tackle. It's probably not because of the injuries, to be honest with you. But I just feel like they're going to go heavy at him, the veteran left tackle, the all-pro potential. I think it's going to be a big battle between the Jets and the Chiefs. So I think that's the guy that they really go heavy on. But they're going to try, there's going to be some splash in free agency. I don't think we're going to get just, run-of-the-mill kind of boring, melancholy kind of free agents. I think they're going to be a little bit more aggressive than they have in years gone by.
Yeah, I think that the situation with JD and it's not. I mean, he'll sit there and say the right things, and I'm going to manage the team, and I'm not worried about my job. But come on, he knows that there's pressure to win now, and there's no way that's not going to impact him and his mindset that it has to happen this year. And they say it too, that we have to win this year. Saleh knows. They all know that we have to win this year. So that's obviously going to mean that they're not going to take this offseason lightly.
Absolutely. Ricky chimes in, says, I think we should keep pick 10 and pick the best tackle there. The only way you move back a few spots is if the first 3 picks are quarterbacks and you love either Olu or Fuaga at that point. Yeah, look, if it gets down to draft day, they stay at pick 10 and they take an offensive tackle, I'm not going to be like, oh, they messed up, because it's obviously a very big position of need. So if Joe Douglas in this regime feels like we're just going to stay. We're going to take our guy, whether it's Olu or Fuaga. I like both those guys a lot. And again, as we've said a billion times, it's going to be dependent, like which one. If they need a left tackle, then it better be Olu. If they sign a big left tackle in free agency, then I think Fuaga makes more sense. I would be okay with them staying there and picking one of those two guys. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and JD has been very good at this. It's about reading the board, right? So Denver is literally 2 picks behind us, and he's going to know who 11 is taking. He's really good. He understands the board really well. Now, let's say you have. I'm not even going to name the tackles, but let's say that he has 2 tackles that are on the board at 10 that are on his board are similar, right? Where you can live with, like, you're just as happy with either one, maybe the slightest difference. And then Denver comes to us and says, we want to flop with you because we're nervous that somebody's going to trade in front of us and take JJ McCarthy, for example, right? So they want to flop over us and just get their guy. So they give us Sutton, right? They offer us Sutton, and they're going to flop with us, and we get Sutton, and we get the number 12 pick, and JD believes that the team in between, there's not going to be any screw up. Like, he believes one of those 2 tackles will be there. Okay, like I trust them to make that move, and I'd be happy with that move, because if we ended up with, let's say it was Fuaga, I would be thrilled if we got Fuaga and just added on Sutton for free.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that, because I think there's a world where you can move back, because you're not moving back to like 25 to do that. It's 2 spots, right? Like there's a world where that could make a lot of sense. I like it, and I think he's one of the better realistic options for the Jets at wide receiver, because I love Calvin Ridley, and I'd be happy if the Jets added Calvin Ridley, but it's very obvious he's the number 1 guy hitting the market. So someone's going to pay him $20+ million a year. I don't know if it's going to be the Jets. Maybe it is, but I think if they're able to flip, even if move back 2 spots, they have 2 4th-round picks, trade one of those 2 4th-round picks for Courtland Sutton. I'm more than okay with doing that in this spot. Jeremy, want to take a crack at Allison Tuckwab super chat here. Is A-Rod hugging it up, foot up? What do we think that means?
A-Rod hugging it up, foot up.
Is he taking it? Maybe like, is he taking it easy, resting up? Is that, maybe that be what Allison Tuckwab means? But I saw that it's super chat. So you got to go to it. We appreciate the super chat. I'm just not sure.
I'll just say this about it, where my take on A-Rod is, and hopefully it answers the question for Allison. Okay. My take is A-Rod had an off years last year with Green Bay for several reasons. He had no wide receivers. They were rookies. He had a broken thumb, and he played through it. And we saw Baker Mayfield got trashed for the same reason, and have his career affected the same reason, where people gave up on him for trying to do the right thing for his team, playing hurt. And then the fans not understanding that impacts your performance, right? So there were issues that year for Green Bay. And I think that, aside from the fact we don't even need MVP A-Rod, we just need a competent quarterback. That's what we've needed for the last 2 years. And I think he's better than just a competent quarterback because of his brain and what he understands and what he knows. I'm not worried about his ankle, because we saw what he was already doing 2 months later. By the time June runs around, he's going to be 100%. So I'm feeling great about A-Rod. I think A-Rod wants to win really bad. I think he's in this to win. He has one thing in his mind, and that's a Super Bowl. I think he really wants to put a second one up there. He cares about his legacy. He wants to do it for another team. I think he really likes it here, and I think he's even more than when he first came here. I think he really wants to do it for the Jet fans. So I'm feeling great about A-Rod, and I think we're going to get a solid top 15 quarterback in the NFL this year.
I agree. I think we're getting a pissed off Aaron Rodgers. Last year was supposed to be the revenge tour. I think he's going to only be even more motivated, where, people counted him out. He gets traded to the Jets. It was the FU tour, and then that lasted all but 4 plays. And like, what do you think? Rodgers is going to fold up shop and be like, that's it. I'm mailing it in now. No, I think he's going to come out even firing even more. So I'm with you there. I think it's going to be fun watching him under center for this team. I was watching some highlights of Aaron Rodgers today, throwing some deep bombs down the field, and I was salivating at the thought of him doing that, throwing it up to Garrett Wilson.
Yep.
Ricky chimes in and says, this is going to be one of the biggest free agents for us in a really long time. You know what? I want to make the comparison to a free agency comparison to. I want to see if you can guess what year I'm thinking of. A really big veteran addition year for the New York Jets in an offseason within my lifetime, within the last 20 years. What year am I thinking of, Jeremy?
Let's see. So I'm going 20 years. It's 24. So from 2004. Are we talking about like the Brett Favre?
Exactly.
Yeah.
2008 year. Here, I pulled it up because I wanted to talk about it with you. So veteran additions this year, a lot of it in free agency. Obviously, the Brett Favre, we know he gets hurt, but Tony Richardson, huge piece of those three teams that went on, that went on deep runs. Damian Woody, Alan Faneca, Calvin Pace, Chris Jenkins. Like, now this is a crop of free agents that really worked out well. Like, those guys were really nice complementary pieces to the core that they built through the draft. David Harris, Darrell Revis, DeBrickashaw, Nick Mangold, Mark Sanchez, all those guys. But they were able to complement them with, on the offensive line, Alan Faneca, Damian Woody, and then Tony Richardson, which was such a huge part. I think this is the kind of offseason the Jets really need in free agency here.
Yeah, this is an example of, the perfect example of the right moves for the offensive line, right? I mean, boy, did they score with those free agents. If we score like that and bring in two offensive linemen that hit like that, and hit hard, that right away gel, and wow, that would be incredible. It's just what we need.
Sign me up for that. Another super chat from Blitz Crew. Thank you so much for the support, Blitz Crew.
Yeah.
After last year, everyone would be happy with Fuaga, Fashanu, Alt, Latham, or Fontenot. If able to trade down, at least one will be there. Hit the milk thumbs, baby. I don't have the graphic lift up on mine, so we'll just do it manually.
Thanks, Blitz Crew.
Yeah, much
Let's see if this
appreciated.
works.
Blitz.
There you go.
Oh, look, there we go. Oh, that's so nice. I didn't know you could do that on stream.
No, it's not StreamYard. It's the newest it's the newest operating system.
Oh,
for Apple.
I was just making it hard set my camera for nothing. I thought something was gonna happen here, but apparently not. So okay, let's pretend the Jets trade back. I would think that Alt and one of Fashanu or Fuaga might not be there if they move back. Is there a trade back target where you're like, if they move back, we'll call it 5+ spots, because if they move back 2, there's a chance that Fashanu or Fuaga is going to be there. But let's say they move back 5 or 6 spots. Who's in that next tier of offensive tackle for you that you would like to see?
And not that I think they should slip back to there, but I think just based on needs, because so many offensive guys are going to go in the first 10, I think you're going to see, defensive players start to go. So I think there are going to be some of these guys available, whether it's because JC, or whether it's Fontenot, or whether it's even Fuaga, because there are some boards that have him at 19 to 20. I'm comfortable with either of them. I think I think Fuaga, of course, Fashanu, but I think Fuaga, Fashanu and all definitely top 10, justified. You could pick them anywhere, and it's not a bad pick. I honestly think Fuaga and Latham could be anywhere, after anywhere after 8 or 9, just based on the other kind of players that are there. Like, for a team, there's too many good players to take that you shouldn't take them. But I think that like Latham, or we could take Latham or Fuaga, and it's fine at 10. I'd rather trade back. I'd rather get something before I do that, because I think that they are going to go back a little bit. But I don't think it's a horrible pick. I think that if you look at the film and really look at them as players, they're plug and play, really good right tackles. So I'm going to say I would feel comfortable, because I honestly believe in this draft, this list, at worst, it'll be Fontenot, because, and I don't even think that's bad, because I think with the new information about his arm length and his arm width and everything, and when you watch his film, he's just an incredible player. And the fact that we could always switch AVT to right tackle and put him at right guard, worst case scenario, that's nice to know. So I'm perfectly happy doing it because of this. This is how I feel about the draft. That's why I want to trade back so badly.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see them trade back. They haven't really done that yet in the first round, right? No, they've traded up in the first round, but they haven't really moved back yet. So would be curious to see that. I will say, I know I've been vocal. I'm not the biggest JC Latham guy, but I will say I was very happy to see where he weighed in at the combine. Him being closer to 340, I think is a great sign for him, and he's growing on me a little bit.
Yeah, and I just needed to see more film on him too. I mean, I saw like one game, and I developed an opinion. And Dom C, I didn't have access to a lot more film, but he sent me a couple of different games, and now I'm kind of sold on him. Like, he's going to be a fine right tackle.
There we go. Let's get to Dano. Says, for Chaos's time, I'll don his channel next time too. Look at that. Thank you, Dano, for nice support. Anything else on these tackles you want to get out here before we move on to our next topic of the day?
No, I think that, for a team that thinks it's jinxed, I want to say we're actually very fortunate this year. One of our big needs is tackle. And believe it or not, this is actually a really good year in the draft for tackle.
Absolutely. So let's get to topic number 2, as apparently the New York Jets, for the second year in a row, being linked to none other than Odell Beckham Jr. Let's pop him up. Josina Anderson, who is always on the money with the Odell report, says, meanwhile, I think the Chiefs, 49ers, Jets, Rams, or returning to the Ravens are the 5 good landing spots for OBJ on mutually agreeable terms. She does say it's her opinion, and like, obviously nothing's written in stone, but I feel like those teams, whenever the big time insiders put these kind of tweets out, probably from the agent or the player, especially when, Josina has that kind of relationship with Odell Beckham Jr. And we know how heavily involved the Jets were in trying to land Odell Beckham Jr. just a year ago. So let's get into it. Odell to the New York Jets in 2024. You rooting for it? What's the feel?
I don't think he feels the need of what we're looking for. If we got him, again, we were talking about this before. If we got a true WR2, and then they brought him in because he fit into the pricing, scheme and the cap and everything. Like, if he doesn't cost a lot and he's going to be the slot and just and be a role player for us, fine. Let him be a role player for us. But I don't believe that's what he wants, and I don't believe that's what's going to happen. And for that reason, I'm a big pass on him because he's not a WR2. He just simply isn't. He doesn't, like, if you look at his numbers, he hasn't been a true WR2 since 2019.
Yeah, that's just it for me. So now, Ricky, great tweet, and he says it, or great response. He says in all caps, so I'll read it. I'll fight anyone who thinks OBJ on a cheap deal for us would be terrible. As wide receiver 3 or 4, why not?
Sure.
With
Exactly.
that part, agree. The last sentence, agree.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what it would be. He got $15 million last year. I think I'm not saying he's going to get 15 again, but like, if it's $10+ million, I don't want to do that. I'd rather go, the trade for Cortland Sutton route, for example, that we've talked about so much on this show. Like, my fear is thinking that running out a Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, and Odell Beckham trio in 11 personnel is good enough, which I don't buy.
Right. I think I don't argue with Ricky at all. I think he's saying exactly what I said. If we're bringing him in as a 3 and 4 on a cheap deal, that would be fine. It wouldn't be terrible, but I don't believe it's going to happen. Just like you said, I don't think Odell believes that's what he is. I think he believes that he's still much better than he really is. And I think he'll even hold out till June and hope for injuries and play that game and be a very late signing for someone, kind of what Dalvin Cook did.
Absolutely. Allison Tuckwab is back. Says, I hope A-Rod is not retiring. I hope not. I'm just correcting myself. Okay. So she's saying, I hope Aaron Rodgers is not retiring. No need to worry on that one. Aaron said himself he wants to play. He said 2, 3, 4. I think it's going to be 2 more years. Anything beyond that is a bonus for me, but my guess is it'll be 24 and 25 at least.
Right. If he plays really well those 2 years and we make deep runs and maybe even win it all, hopefully, God be willing, then and he wants to keep playing, that'll be great because until his skills decline, why would we have anything against it? I mean, we're paying for him. Believe me, we're going to be paying for him in 26. So if he wants to play in 26 and he's still effective in 24 and 25, I take that all day long. But I wouldn't worry. He's here at least 2 years. Knock on wood that he stays healthy.
How about Billy SBC, who says, but what about Odell with Corey Davis coming back? You guys in for that? Jeremy, I'll let you go first on this one.
Again, I'm okay with the combination if Odell is not expected. I have concerns about Odell. Like, first of all, I have a hard time believing he's going to come at the price that's fair and reasonable because I honestly believe he's a $6 to $8 million receiver tops because he's a WR3. I mean, that's the best that he is. What's scary about this is that Corey Davis missed a year. He's coming back. We don't know a lot about him, so I don't really. Like, I still want the WR2. I don't want it to be Corey Davis.
Exactly.
I want I would love for Corey Davis to come to camp, and like just let's get Rich in the position if he is, if he comes back refreshed and he's good and he comes back like a really good receiver, that's great for us, but not as my WR2. We can't take chances. I want a solid WR2.
Yeah, that's just it for me. Like, you're bringing both these guys back, and both guys have a lot of variables and could be high variance players with, what happened with them last year. For Odell, he played in 14 games, which, pretty solid considering that he missed all of 2022. 565 yards, 3 touchdowns. There were some moments where he was okay. Again, is he still a serviceable wide receiver in this league? Yes. Corey Davis missed the entire 2023 season. So I have no idea what he's going to be coming back. I wouldn't feel comfortable with either of those guys as a number 2 option. If you want to pick one of those two as wide receiver 3 and then get somebody else in free agency, like a bigger name or more productive name, then okay, sure. But both those guys, and assuming that's going to fix wide receiver 2 and 3, I don't buy that.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if either Odell at a good price or Corey Davis was wide receiver 4. Like, I wouldn't mind that at all. Like or actually, yeah, like if we brought in a number 2 receiver, actually, I'm sorry, if one of those guys came as a WR3 and they made Lazard the number 4, then I'm starting to feel better about the room because I'm actually okay with Allen Lazard as a number 4 receiver because I think he'll be a little better with Rodgers back.
Yeah.
Right.
I hope so too. He's going to be on the roster this year. There's nothing they could do about that. So you're just hoping that he could be, somewhat close to his former self.
Yeah, like if he could if he's suddenly your number 4 guy, your number 4 receiver that comes onto the field sometimes, or if there's an injury, he has a rapport with Aaron Rodgers, and that's not a horrible thing. So I think that would be the best scenario if he gets bumped all the way down to 4, meaning we sign a really good WR2, and we do have somebody else that's better than him to be the number 3, and maybe that would be Corey Davis.
Yeah, it could be. That'd be an interesting one to see if they brought him back. Do you think he comes back to the league, or do you think he's done, Corey?
I don't even know why he left. I don't think they ever got the full story, did they?
No, I would imagine it's got to be something going on family related, right? Because he walked away from $10 million, and something must have obviously been going on pretty serious behind the scenes if he was walking away from that. So obviously wishing him well in his life, and if everything's to the point where he feels ready to come back to football, I'm interested in it, but I'm not like, oh my god, that the Jets just found their wide receiver 2 solution. That's also not great.
I'm in the same place. I think that if it's something that he could have, like, I think it's very possible if it's something that he was able to manage. Like, sometimes there's a dramatic change in your household, right? Whether it's somebody sick or something, a full year you've worked out that life. You're now able to move on with your life because you have, whether it's nursing, you have a plan. Your life has been adjusted to this new situation, and suddenly, hey, I got to get on with my life still, and I miss football, and I'm healthy. He'd be fully healthy, and I think that he'd be a guy at at wide receiver 3. There's, you're not asking him to do so much, and he'd have upside because maybe he'd be even better than the version of him we got.
There we go. I wanted to pull this one up from our guy Randy because it says, I'm getting the feeling the Jets are going to pull off what the Broncos did with Elway late in his career, back-to-back Super Bowls. Am I dreaming or smoking crack? Randy, can we get to one? Not stick with. I would love to, obviously. But let's focus on the one before we're talking about 2, 3, 4, 5.
If you're smoking crack, Randy, I'm smoking crack too, because I honestly believe it could happen within the next 2 years. That's what I'm hoping for this year. Like, I'm not going to let everybody. A lot of people want to tear it down. I am not going to let people tear it down. I just refuse to believe that with our defense and Breece Hall, everybody knows how much I love Breece Hall, and having Aaron Rodgers healthy. If we could patch together, if we can improve this offensive line with Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, get me a number 2 receiver, I'm running out of reasons why I shouldn't believe we could win a Super Bowl. I really am, because this defense is that good and Breece Hall is that good. You give him an offensive line. Look what he's done as a running back without an offensive line. Give him an offensive line. What is that going to do to our running game? And how much is that going to help our passing game? And now all of a sudden, you're not just talking about a competent quarterback. You're talking about a Hall of Fame quarterback. So why not dream of a Super Bowl? I know that while I'm in town and in New York and could legally gamble on these apps, I'm putting 100 on the Jets to win the Super Bowl.
Attaboy. There we go. Peter from up in the beautiful Hudson Valley says, if it's 10 million or more for Odell, spend that money on 2 decent guards or 1 better guard and a running back too, etc. I'm kind of in that same boat. Like, I don't think wide receiver 3 is as big of a priority as your starting guard / RB2. And I like the idea of adding a veteran running back on the cheap to be RB2. I think there's going to be some decent options. I'm not saying like pay for a name like Tony Pollard or Saquon Barkley or Austin Eckler, but I think you could find a veteran relatively cheap, whether it be Antonio Gibson or Dameon Pierce or someone like that.
And people should remember there's a reason why they held on to guys like Brownlee and Xavier Gibson. There's a reason that Xavier Gibson beat out McCall Hardman for his job. And these were rookies. These were undrafted free agents. I don't think it's crazy to rule out the possibility that these guys are going to improve a little bit and develop and be better players. Because, and if you need, proof of that, or you need an example of an undrafted free agent who develops and gets better every year, there's a guy we were really all bummed about that we're probably going to lose named Bryce Huff. So, I think that while we can't rely on them, we shouldn't forget that we have a couple of young receivers that this team seems to believe in that did some things that looked exciting that could still possibly eventually, find a way to help this team.
Absolutely. I meant Devin Singletary, by the way, who spelled Dameon Pierce. I said that backwards. But anyway, let's get back into some of the comments over here. What would you think of Ricky's wide receiver room? Garrett Wilson, Cortland Sutton trade, Odell wide receiver 3, Lazard, and then Gibson. That's not bad. I can get behind that.
I would feel very good about it as long as all the contracts and the way it was done makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Or I think he follows it up with Polk in the 3rd round. I think if Odell's going to sign cheap, aka $5 million or less, so Odell, or if not, swap in Polk for Odell or a wide receiver in the 3rd round instead. That I think is fine for me.
I don't know if there's a 3rd round wide receiver we could rely on that we know is going to be better than Lazard for WR3. And I know Lazard had a really bad year, but a rookie wide receiver taken in the 3rd round, I'm not saying it's impossible. We saw what Puka did last year,
Sure.
But it's certainly not something we're going to rely on. Like, you have to have a backup plan. It doesn't mean that these guys aren't going to be successful eventually, but there's a reason why they're there in the third rounds. They might not exactly be guys that are ready to contribute. But to counter my own argument, my own points, if you're asking them to be a wide receiver 3, they only need 400 to 500 yards, and that's okay.
Exactly.
So
they might be able to find it, but that's a valid point. You're taking someone in the third or fourth round. I think is fair to estimate where the Jets might go wide receiver. Maybe Allen Lazard is in front of them, and then they're wide receiver 4. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how they go about doing that. SG31 Black says Ricky Pearsall is ready. While I don't disagree, I think he's going to be a second round guy. I don't think he'll be there for the Jets at 72. Do you?
Right, that's the problem. If somehow he was there, then hey, you never know. Like I said, there's always outliers. Puka Nacua. I mean, there's always outliers. I mean, he's my funnest example because we all wanted him. So the whole Jets fan base wanted this kid. And for some reason, there was no interest to take him. But yeah, I think that there's a possibility. Like, I don't know why. There are guys that have slipped in the draft before that we've all known about, like George Pickens. There's like every year it feels that way, and like they still, I feel, and it could be wrong. You might end up going early in the second round or late first round, but and then again, according to a lot of boards still have Roman Wilson being around, and that makes no sense at all to me. And that's a guy I believe could come in and be a 500-yard receiver his first year easy.
Yeah, I think so too. And like, I would love for Roman Wilson to make it to 72. And in a lot of mocks early on, he was. After his performance at the Senior Bowl and his testing and stuff, I would be absolutely shocked. He might he's probably going to end up being a top 50 pick, I think.
I wouldn't be surprised, and it would be rightfully so.
Look at this. We got our guy Johnny with us. He goes, I made the show, and then follows up with a chat, says, Matt and Chaos. So the Packers might cut Aaron Jones. Would we go after him, and what would it take? Your thoughts on Aaron Jones if the Packers cut him?
Running backs aren't that expensive, and they really aren't, except when you sign Dalvin Cook. But everybody else seems to be coming at discounts and things like that. I think it depends. I think they would have to interview Aaron Jones and decide and understand. Again, you don't want players that are unhappy. You have to make sure that the fit is there. You have to make sure that they want to be here. Does Aaron Jones want to come to the New York Jets and not back up? I'm sorry, because an RB2 in today's football is not a backup player. That's a position. They are the RB2. Does he want to be RB2? That's the question. Is it because maybe he believes with Rodgers we could win a Super Bowl again? I miss Aaron. My body's beat up anyway. Maybe I'll be better. Maybe it's better for me to be an RB2, and that'll be the most effective and best version of myself. But he's got to believe that. If he believes that he's the man and wants to go to a place to be the man, we're not the right place for him.
No, but if he's comfortable being an RB2, I would definitely be interested. And I know that kind of it seems maybe crazy because I was very against signing Dalvin Cook last year, and Aaron Jones is technically older than Dalvin Cook, but he has significantly more juice left. Like, I pulled up his numbers at the end of last year. After he came back from injury down the stretch, he was phenomenal. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight 100-yard games with a lot of workload running into the playoffs and on a win streak for them. So I still think he has something left in the tank. He averaged 4.6 yards a carry in the regular season. It ended up working out, and 5.8 yards a carry in the playoffs. I think if the price is right, I would do it and also he's a weapon out of the backfield as a pass catcher and can pass protect, which is something these other running backs on this roster don't really do all that well. So I would really consider it, and it's going to depend on the cost, obviously. But if he's going to get around $7 million, I don't know. I would think long and hard about it. I think it'd be a significantly better signing than Dalvin Cook was last year.
Yeah, because and I agree with you 100%, and I'll drive the point home. There was never a point where Dalvin Cook was better than Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is a better football player than Dalvin Cook, and he always has been. Just because of his versatility and everything he does as a solid all-around running back, he is the better running back. and then people age differently. And obviously, Aaron Jones is aging very well. So I yeah, man, if they have the money, if they make it work, if they're able to, as long as it doesn't come in the way of signing the guard or the tackle that we need to sign, as long as they make it work, I'd be thrilled if Aaron Jones was our guy, especially if he came in saying, I look forward to working and playing with Brees Hall, and he's excited about it and saying, I think we're going to complement each other well. And he goes in there clearly understanding what he's walking into. So, and obviously he will. There were other players in the NFL. No, there's no running back in the NFL that doesn't think I'm going to go to New York and be the RB1 over like Brees Hall. Nobody thinks that. They know that we have a very special running back.
Absolutely. Knob chimes in. He's a member of the channel. Says Aaron Jones is just another excuse for Salah's regime to slack off developing another youngster like Izzy. I don't look at it that way. I think it's insurance because, like, again, this is a year where they're going for it. They need to be a playoff team this year, and that's not to say that 𝐒𝐮𝐫𝐚 can't take the next step. But I think if you're going into 2024 and your plan is to have him as RB2, I think that's pretty risky and maybe a little short-sighted. What about you?
Yeah, I think it was. Look, one of the things I was upset about last year was a mistake not to use him more, and but they made the decision to not, even though our season was over, to not give this kid more reps, and because of that, we don't know what we have. And as a team that needs to win now, with a player who's already torn his ACL in our starting running back, you want to know that you have a guy that it's not a question mark. And Aaron Jones, aside from just giving us a good running back too, if, knock on wood, anything was to happen to Brees Hall, we know that we have a quality running back who can rush over 100 yards a game for consecutive games if need be.
Absolutely. So I would be in on it. Obviously, it's going to be dependent on what the cost is. Like, I'm not saying you're paying them $10+ million a year. That's kind of crazy town. But if it's 6-7 million, maybe, that's a little bit of a different story. It's going to be interesting. And it's crazy too, to think about, Jeremy, by this time next week, when we're doing the show next week, the Jets team is going to look completely different.
Yeah, it's crazy how much more we're going to know the next time we do this show. I can't wait. I've been so excited, and I'm so glad that I'm on vacation. So I'm going to be able to on Monday follow it and just be, I'm not like stuck doing anything. I'm super, super excited. It's going to be so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And also too, like, not only is it it'll be great to see like what veterans they're adding and what their plan is in free agency, but it could also very well hint at what their plan is going to be in the draft. So it's not just, hey, what veterans are we getting in here? We've talked about pretty much the whole episode today was, well, we got to see what's going to happen in free agency, and then we'll have a better idea what's going to happen in the draft. So it's kind of twofold in that way.
Yeah. The most exciting thing I think can happen is that we address both of the needs in some way that really brings us into the draft, knowing that we could take the best player available. Like, to put ourselves, if we can have a free agency that allows us to go into the draft and truly take the best player available, this is number 10 becomes a very exciting pick.
Right. Because then you have no idea what they're going to do. They could really do anything at that point.
Yeah.
Blitzker's got another super chat. Michael Thomas versus OBJ if the money's the same. Jeremy, what do you say?
He's very similar in what my concern would be. Of course, it would be WR3. I actually think Michael Thomas has more upside. Like, I think that I do. I think like he could more realistically. We don't want to rely on it. But that's the only issue with him, is that you can't rely on it. OBJ, I know what he is. He's a 40 receptions tops, 500-yard guy. He's not going to do you any better than that. Michael Thomas might still have something in him now that he's healthy. He looked good at the end of his tenure there. If you look at his last some games, he was starting to come around. So there is some upside there. I wouldn't want to rely on it as our WR2. But I might take him as our WR3 over Beckham.
Let's pull up the numbers. Michael Thomas in 2023, right? Yeah, I mean, there were a couple good games in a row here to start the year, and then he didn't play towards.
Did he get hurt again?
Yeah, he did get hurt again towards
Yeah.
the end of the year. But he finished with 448 yards in 10 games. I think I would go Odell just because he's played more over the last, like both of these guys haven't played a ton,
I know they're scary.
which is crazy, but they're around the same age, very different wide receivers, right? Like as Michael Thomas is a bigger, 6'3", 212, as Odell's like a little speedy slot guy. I think I'd rather Odell because he's played a little bit more recently, but
But I don't honestly though, and not to put down the question, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I don't believe they're going to get paid the same. I think, like I said, Odell is like a Conor McGregor. He knows how to promote himself. He's going to get like Michael Thomas. Like the difference between those two is more than just the same price. I think that in reality, I think Michael Thomas is going to end up getting less than Beckham.
Okay.
Like by a significant, like 2 to 3 million less.
Interesting. All right. So yeah, I mean that's obviously going to play a factor in it as well. When, because Michael I would think Thomas is going to get a 1-year deal. Do you think there's a chance Odell gets a multi-year deal, or do you think it's going to be another 1-year deal?
I think that he's a mercenary. He's going to be a 1-year guy the rest of his career.
Okay, totally fair on that one. Jeremy, as we're beginning to wrap up the show here on this lovely Thursday, wanted to get your final thoughts on any predictions that you think might happen between now and the next time we speak on Thursday, free agency wise.
I think we're going to sign some players. What I predict is there's going to be at least one signing, or maybe even two, but there's going to be one signing that it's going to be a player for a significant role that we're not talking about, because that's what JD seems to always do. So there's going to be a guy that we didn't talk about. He's going to sign somebody, and most people aren't going to be mad once we study it. Like it's going to be someone we all get excited about and think, wow, that was a good pick. Well, I didn't see that coming. So I think there'll be one of those, and I think it'll probably be somewhere along the offensive line.
I think they will sign. I think the first signing will be a backup quarterback early, and it'll be either Jacoby Brissett or Gardner Minshew. I think it'll be a big name. And then they will sign a starting caliber offensive lineman. And we're going to spend next week yelling about how do they still not have a wide receiver. That's going to be my prediction.
Sounds so real.
Stay off of Twitter, Jeremy. We know you get fired up on there with the Jet fans. Just want to plug it one more time, guys. I'm going to pull the banner down just to talk about it. You guys know the NFL draft is coming up very soon, April 25th. We are hosting a draft party at the main event in Farmingdale out on Long Island. You could scan the QR code or go to talkinjets.com and pick yourself up some tickets. But that is going to do it for us in this episode of Reality Check. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe before you go, give a like, and we'll catch you next time.